What is your take on the Chinese government publicly ramping up its efforts in AI?
This is a clear directive coming from the top ranks of the Chinese government saying we want to be the global leader in this area. We no longer want to be a follower of Western technologies. They saw Western companies really become the dominant players in software and chips, and they're saying AI is still an emerging technology and we still have room and time to beat out the competition. Many experts say that China is really only a step behind many of its Western competitors, so the Chinese government clearly thinks that with their partnership plans, with the investment of capital, that they still have a chance. And these are very bold ambitions. They're saying that by 2030, China will become the world's premier artificial intelligence center in the world.
You know, interestingly, they specifically say this is to give China a competitive advantage, in part because of national security concerns. Does this raise alarm bells for the U.S. government?
Well, the U.S. government has already there are reports that they're watching quite closely at Chinese investments in U.S. startups that are developing artificial intelligence. And also we've seen CFIUS seem to tighten their controls as well as delay some of their approvals of these deals. So the U.S. government is going to be watching how they plan to use AI for military technology, and not to mention the fact that as China is bolstering its investment in AI with this very bold claim, at the very same time the U.S. has been cutting back funding to science research.
David, AI seems to be the next big thing from almost everyone's perspective. To some extent, it's not surprising that the Chinese government would want to focus on it, but perhaps that they are doing so publicly. What's your take?
Well, it's a pretty stark contrast with our own government, which, as Selina says, really isn't doing much at all to, push the progress forward of this key technology, except perhaps to the degree they're doing so secretly in the military. I'm sure there is a lot of work happening behind closed doors. But, when we think about the fact that our government invented the internet and that kind of project has been our history, that we have a president, I don't believe, who has ever uttered the phrase artificial intelligence. And if he has, I doubt if he would be able to explain what it is. Not that it's easy to explain, by the way. But here we have, at the highest level of the Chinese government, a major commitment. It's really, really a stark contrast that is scary. Luckily, we are still ahead. Google, Facebook, Amazon, IBM, a number of our big companies are putting enormous resources into it. The same, though, is true in China with Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu. They also have the ways and the people to advance it, and I'm sure they'll be working closely with the Chinese government. I think it's worrisome. We're still ahead, but we can't just assume that will remain the case.
What does this mean, Selina, for those Chinese companies that David mentioned, the biggest Chinese companies that are already working on AI?
Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, they're rapidly trying to catch up to the Google, Facebooks, and Amazons. And with the help of the government, this is probably just going to accelerate that closing of the gap. Baidu, they've done significant work in voice recognition technology and driverless cars. They have a big research center in Silicon Valley, as well as one in China with the cooperation of Beijing. We're seeing Tencent also pour significant energy in this area, as well as Alibaba, not only to drive their core business, but we're also seeing them invest in driverless software, driverless technology. So this is really just going to be fuel for the BATs to continue to push ahead and be the leader in this field.